So, Garry, I am so excited to chat with you today about your new book. Before we dive into the book, tell the viewers who Garry Cox is and a little bit about your professional background.
Okay, that shouldn't take too long. Actually, I would say one good way to describe me is I'm an education lifer. I've made my living through education most of my life. I've done other things. I've been a probation officer, which I enjoyed that. I've done a lot of amateur theater, and I've actually done some professional theater, not on Broadway or anything like that, but I have a newspaper friend who described what we did, my company did, as grant theater. We would write grants and then we would uh, present shows. And basically, what we did is we didn't create the shows themselves, but we would go into neighborhoods and we would advertise ourselves as doing a play. And if you have any interest or any talents, come on and try out. And we were actually putting on valid theater pieces with amateurs, but we were getting ourselves paid through the grant. So it's like I've spent a lot of time doing theater, a lot of time in a classroom. I think one way I like to describe myself as blessed. Okay. Um, I remember this is several years ago. I'm riding on a bus in Detroit, Michigan, where I lived for 20 years. And I'm going to work. Okay. Now, someone might wonder, well, why were you taking the bus to work? And for a brief period of time, the state of Michigan and I disagreed about whether I should have a driver's license. We resolved that, but at that time, I was taking the bus. And I get on a bus early in the morning, and that was the time when I had three different sites, and I'd have to make all three of them in one day. So I was pretty slick with the bus thing. But I'm riding along, and I'm looking at people, and everybody's sitting there like everybody's giving a look, and it's like I'm like Jesus, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like because I'm going to work. And I love my work so much. I said, I am, compared to the rest of these folks, I don't know where they're going or where they work. I said, but I must be one lucky son of a gun because I am happy. I know that as soon as I walk through the door, my students are going to go, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to have another great day. And that's my stint in education. Um, I didn't really rise much beyond that. I did get a master's degree in educational leadership at Northern University here in Arizona. Um, and I was the director of a huge learning center through the latter years of my educational career. But for the most of my life, I've been a classroom guy, and I loved it, just loved it.
Thank you for that. So, you've been a lifelong educator, but also an artist in performing theater. And you have this new book out. So, what inspires you? What keeps you getting up with all this energy every day?
Well, I gotta tell you, I want to start out by saying the book wasn't really my idea. I mean, I had written two books and I wanted to write more, and I'm going to keep writing until somebody starts to pay attention. It's like, and I've got energy and maybe hopefully time. But I actually, I want to refer to my notes here and make sure I get their names right. Um, Joy Hetler and Mallory Gilbert, two young ladies that I met through my association with the Altus Athletic Group. which I probably don't have time to talk to, but it was like it's a huge international group. They put 21 people in the 2016 Olympics, and but you know, not everybody that would. And there's a little story, quick little story. My training buddy of mine and I, Dave Dewar, would go to this track, and we had been training there for years. And one day we go, and there's a sign up, and it says this is closed to private concerns. And we're standing there looking at it like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean we can't go in or what? And my friend Dave is a big deal in cross country and track and field. He's retired, but he knows everybody. And it's like all of a sudden the director of and the creator of Altus sees us standing there, and he says, "Oh, those guys are grandfathered in. Let them in," you know. And that just opened up a wonderful period of time where we were just like the regular athletes. We walked around, we knew all of them. You know, I picked up trainers, and that's how my first book got published. It was actually one of the Ian, and I don't remember his last name, but he was working for Altus, and one of the gals knew that I was writing a book, and he said, "Well, go talk to Ian." And so Ian said, "Well, you should call Angie." And I said, "Who's Angie?" You know, and the rest is history. You
Here we
know.
are. Yes.
So anyway, uh, what was the question?
Yes. Okay. We're talking about what motivated you to start
Oh,
writing poetry,
I
and then
wanted to get to the two young ladies that I mentioned who were really instrumental. I have this. I call them my gal Fridays, and to do the things that I do, I need help, and I often hire young people who are are tech savvy and much smarter than I am, and they seem to be willing to help me for not a whole lot of money, and it's like, and I'm happy, and they seem happy, and Joy and Mallory were my first two Gal Fridays, and Mallory helped me with my first book, and Joy, of course, as you know, helped me with my second book. And it was Joy's idea. It was the two of them teamed up, and they said you should write. Well, what we would call in the old days, we call it a pot boiler. You know, it's
Mhm.
not. It ain't designed to be art. It's designed to sell some books. You know, it's like, but they didn't use that terminology. They thought it would be a good idea to have a coffee table book, and they said, you've had enough feedback on your poetry to know the poems that seem to be popular, you know. And they said, so why don't you write a book, and that's what you're going to feature. And I think, I don't know about that. It's like I wanted some kind of like blockbuster idea that was really gonna like take off and put me on, on everybody's radar. And they said, well, you can do that, but we think it'd be better if you did the coffee table book. I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I did enjoy going through my the poetry that I've already written and
Mhm.
some of it published, and picking out the ones that have been popular. Um, but then, of course, COVID hit, and throughout all this time, I never stopped writing. The main thing about me, and I may forget to do a lot of things, but one thing about me is that I know what I am, and primarily, I'm a poet. That's what I'm really good at, and that's what I'm going to do the rest of my life. But there are a lot of other things that go along with that. So it's like, all right, I got busy on the book. It took longer than I thought it was going to take because I'm writing new stuff based on what's going on during COVID, you know.
Right.
And that's how we get the title. Actually, I was thinking of a blog I'm writing called "What I Did on My COVID-19 Vacation," but the book Coffee with the Bard, 2020 Blues, of course, had to have several poems that were written during the time of COVID. So it's like you do get a good, I think, a good slice of who I am and how I respond to things with the book. So it's not just my oldies but goodies. It is me living through what everybody's been living through, the
Yes.
pandemic, you know. And so I ended up being very proud of the book, and
What
I like what's in it. I like the way it looks. Of course, you had a lot to do with that, and I think the girls are happy with it too. You know,
so you got this idea about writing the book from Mallory and Joey, and we've gone on this journey and we're almost at completion. We're almost at the finish line. What do you hope readers get from the book when they read it? What impact do you want it to have? Do you hope that it has on their life?
well, you know, I always want to have a larger audience. You know, and I hope, but to be honest, I just hope that the poems are received as an honest response to a living person. You know, I don't claim to be, a great thinker or anything, but I do believe that, well, my philosophy on poetry is I don't really know what I think about anything until I write. And when I write, I get up in the morning. I don't say, well, I'm going to write this kind of a stuff today. Or I'm going to do that. I just get up and face my computer, the screen, my computer screen. And, I may look at 3 or 4 poems that I've been working on, but I have no preconceived, adjourn, plan. you know? uh, but as soon as I write a line, things start to come to me. So what I end up with is not something I intended to do. It's something that grew out of something that came in my head. I put it down on paper. And as soon as I put it down on paper, I began to realize what I've been thinking about for maybe months, maybe years. And that's kind of me in the modern world,
That's
and
really powerful, Gary. That's really powerful. And I remember you saying that part of that is who you've been for years. And part of what makes Coffee with the Bar so special is that you wrote a poem every morning for Bernice. Will you talk about that process and how that's connected to the goal of the book?
I would love to. I would love to. And it's funny because I think I've made it clear. If I haven't made it clear, I did not grow up wanting to be a great poet. I didn't grow up thinking about poetry much at all, but I was an avid reader, and at a very early age. And I spent a lot of time in libraries, and I've read a lot of poetry, and I've read all the great literature, um, either before I went to college or after I went to college. And the poetry was just kind of a thing that we were living in Phoenix. We'd been married for a while. Bernice was retired, and I was not, you know. And since she kind of handled my finances, and God bless her for that, because now I have the time and the circumstances to do all the writing I can get done. But anyway, um, there was a bit of a gap, I'd be gone for hours in a day, and I just one morning I wrote, I said I should do something let me leave her a poem so she doesn't feel like she's just left there all alone until I get home, you know. And she loved it. And I was the director of a huge learning center at the time in Phoenix. I worked for Rio Salado College, and trying to think of the Maricopa Skill Center was a huge training place for young people, you know, for job training
Mhm.
facility. So I had access to all kinds of junk. So what I did is I grabbed a 2 foot by 4 foot whiteboard, stuck it up in front of my computer where I'm at right now, sitting in this chair right here. So now I didn't have a big screen like that. I had a much smaller screen. You know, I've evolved, as it were. You know, but and I would make this stuff up in the shower. You know, and it wasn't poetry to me. It was just a little ditty that I wanted to leave for Bernice, just to let her know how much I enjoyed being with her, and you know, kind of, excuse me,
So,
um, appreciated her in our life. And it got to the point where she expected it. You know, it's like, and every once in a while I would go home after work and she'd give me the look, you know. She says, I didn't get my poem today. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, about that. You know, I was in a big hurry, darling. You know, give me a break. But I tell you what, she did not have to chide me very often. I came through um, when I worked. I didn't do anything on the weekends. I told her if I left town for business or something, she was on her own. You know, but as long as I was there in the house, she was gonna get that poem. And her daughter came through and stayed with us, and she started looking at, she'd get out, she'd read my poems. And she told Bernice, she said, you know, you ought to do something with those poems that Garry writes. He writes so many of them, you know, you ought to publish them or something, you know. And Bernice's response was typical Bernice. She said, well, no, those are my poems. They're for me. They don't need to be published. And that was the end of that, you know. But you know, that went on for several years, and I got to where I kind of liked it, you know. And when she passed, um, two things. I started a blog series about our life, and a note for writers, and most writers will understand this. You have to have a voice. You have to have a voice that is your voice. It has to be authentic, and it's not really something you can go to school for, you know. And you can do a lot of writing and not have a voice. I've done a lot of writing in my life, but I never had a voice until I started doing the blog about the two of us and our lives together. And I started way back when we met, and just each series would be a sort of a chapter in our lives. And in that process, I actually found my voice. This is how you write. This is, I guess, who you are, you know? And that was such a gift, you know. I don't know that I would have ever found it on my own, but I realized you can write now. You can write pretty much whatever you want to write, and you do want to write. And so it was just somehow it was easy to fall into poetry after that, because you know, I mean, I had unfinished novels, I had unproduced plays, I had a ton of stuff, and I didn't really like too much of any of it, to be honest with you. um, but when I started writing poetry, I noticed, I said, you know, my gosh, you can finish a whole idea in one day, you know. Matter of fact, you could finish several ideas in one day. Or you could write something like long, like I've got a poem about my dog. It's got to be 3 or 4 pages long in the book, you know. It's like, um, So I started to realize all the freedom that a poet had, and that was the kind of freedom that I was really looking for. And once I started, I couldn't stop, you know. And I suppose that I'll be, if I go down as an old poet, that's all right with me, you know. It's like I could have been worse, you know.
Well, it's really
But
exciting to have the
yeah,
new book coming out.
and I think finding yourself, and I'm big, I'm anti-sexism, I'm anti-racism, and I'm anti-ageism, you know, and I have been since I was a kid. It used to tick me off. People telling me you're too young. You don't know. I'm too young to what? To have a brain, to have an idea, to see what's going on, you know? And that always ticked me off. And so I started out being like that. And now I get aggravated when I hear people talk about, well, you know, old people can't do this, they can't do that, you know, and it's like, I beg your pardon. You know, there are people in their 90s writing songs and books. You know what I'm saying? Some of them are even dancing.
Definitely.
You can
Definitely.
do that, you know. And I think it's what's important. Longevity is, you know, as far as we know, we're all going to go at some point. We're all going to cross over to whatever we believe we're going to cross over to, you know. And I'm not trying to deny that, you know, but until that day, you know, and I think I've got a poem to that effect. But until that day, hey, I'm here. You know, I'm here. I'm cooking. I'm doing what I love to do, and I've got friends, and we get through this damn COVID stuff, and you know,
Yep, absolutely. That's
we'll be
this was
golden. We'll be
powerful, and I
golden.
think part of
I
that
think, yeah.
is what
So,
we want
you know,
in terms
I'm
of
not
the
trying
reader
to
to
give
understand.
a philosophy here.
Mhm.
I know things have changed, but in a way, things don't ever really change because I'm big on dreams. You know, you dreams are important. They're what make us who we are, and dreams don't have age. You know, if you dream of being a writer, it doesn't matter when you start. You know,
Very true.
it only matters really, I think, uh, how you finish. You know,
Very true. Gary, that's so powerful. Is that one of the lessons that came out of 2020 for you? With the book Coffee with the Bar, the 2020 Blues, what's a lesson that you learned from last year that you like the readers to understand as it's connected to the book?
oh, I well, I, I, I think what I would want people to get out of the book is that life can't be summed up, you know, in dogma or politics or religion or any of that stuff. Life is much bigger than that, you know. Poetry itself is much bigger than that. I happen to think, you know, people when they talk about great literature, they start with the famous novelists, and then they go to the playwrights, and then they trickle down to the poets. But what they don't seem to realize is that poetry starts it all. Poetry really is the top, and I think that all of my favorite authors uh, write in a very poetic manner. I don't care what they write, but I see poetry in everything that they do, you know, whether they see it or not. You know, I've got a friend who writes crime novels, and he does the alliteration 10 times better than I do, you know,
Hmm.
and he's not a poet, doesn't consider himself a poet. So I just think that life is a journey of discovery, and that we should not ever give up on our dreams, and that we will get around to them if we don't quit, if we don't give up, you know, if we don't accept the limitations that people set on us. And I think you might get a bit of that out of my book. I think I talk about everything from being a kid who lost his dog or lost his father, to an old person who gets up every day to do something new and to see what he can come up with, what he can create. And I think you see that in my poems. You know, I mean, you may
Absolutely.
see some other things. They're not. It's not all sweetness in life. I mean, I have my attitudes, and I have my emotional reactions to what goes on. But if I didn't, I wouldn't be much of a poet. So I think that the book is kind of inspirational, to be honest with you. And it is because I, as a human being, consider myself a person who is easily inspired.
Agreed. Agreed. In the time that I've known you, and from The Waters of Appanoose County, your first book, to Beyond the Waters, and now Coffee with the Bard, you're definitely inspirational and definitely inspiring. Now, when does the book come out? When does Coffee with the Bard come out?
Oh, it comes out the 18th of this month.
May 18th. Yes, very
May
soon.
18th, yeah. Thank you for reminding me, and I'm glad. For about a month, I swear I couldn't get that date in my head. We had talked. I knew when it was going to be, but it's like, when was that? When was that?
Not a problem. Not
But
a problem.
yeah, I'm super happy about that.
It's
And
going
I
to
had
be,
a nice experience this last weekend. I told you I was going to do an audio book,
yes.
and we're three-quarters of the way through that
Okay.
as of last Saturday. So
That's
uh,
exciting. Is this
yeah,
this is your
yeah,
first audiobook, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course, uh, it's simply me reading the poems that you will get when you purchase my book,
Absolutely. Yes.
Coffee with the Bard.
Now, where
And
will
by the
people
way,
be able to?
I mentioned in the book that I introduced the bard, and
Yeah.
I think I put in the book, I'm considering this guy to be my spokesperson, and to be my guy, to represent me, and I'm trying him out in this book, and so here he is. And so I bill myself as the Bard of Appanoose. Sometimes I say the whole thing, the Bard of Appanoose County, but that's kind of long, so I say the Bard of Appanoose. But yeah, far as I know, um,
May 18th is the date. And
I'm
then
the
where
only
will
one.
people be able to find the book? What's your social media handles? What's your website?
Uh, well, now the social media, of course, will have all the info of the book. You can get it through that. I also have an address for my website, and I encourage people to go to the website because there's a lot of poetry on it. But there's also the story I told you about Bernice, and there's also what I did on my COVID vacation. And I plan to end that blog series with a great poem by Maya Angelou, who wrote it um, when Nelson Mandela died. She wrote this just wonderful eulogy to him. It's just wonderful. And I'm about ready to wrap that series up. And so, you know, he and Muhammad Ali are probably my two biggest heroes
They're both
for what
very
they
dynamic.
endured. One was in prison for 27 years and came out to be the president of South Africa, you know, and of course, more Americans know about Muhammad Ali, who was stripped of his title and not allowed to fight for four of what for an athlete like him would be his prime
Absolutely.
years, and still came back to win a title twice
Pretty
actually.
incredible.
So
Very incredible. So if people want to read your blog series to find out more about you, they can go to GarryLCox.com.
Yes.
And then if people want to follow you on social media on Instagram, you're Garry L period Cox on Instagram, and then Facebook, Garry L Cox.
Right. Right.
Perfect.
And if you want to be my Facebook friend, it's like, but yeah, that's good information, and thank you for remember. Actually, I sort of had it written down. I was thinking, well, am I going to have to like do one of these, you know? But thank you
You're
for
welcome. I'm
supplying
on
that
your team.
information.
I'm here for you. I'm on
Uh,
your team.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, I'm sort of like beyond excited, you know. It's
It's very exciting.
and it's funny, you know. I think, well, I should thank the girls for encouraging me to write this book, because I think it allowed me to do some things I might not have done if we hadn't chosen this format. And so I just ended up being pleased, like if I like text a friend or something like that, I said, you know, you got to get my new book. It's a
That's
pip, you know, and
one
I
of the things.
totally, you know, I love her. I love her, and
One
I
of the things,
appreciate.
Gary, that's a little different with this book than the other books that we work together on is that there are images in this book. The first
Oh
books
yeah,
was
yeah,
purely text, and so this book has some really great visuals that are paired with the
it
poem
does, and
that
there's a
add a
story
new
behind that too.
kind of
You know,
energy.
I went through one of the reasons it took so long to finish the book was that I went through several illustrators,
Yes,
and I finally ended up with two who got it done, and bless them. And they're both in the credits of the book.
yes,
Okay, they came in kind of like from left field. My daughter found one who was actually a rapper and a friend of hers, and he created all the Bard images. And then there was a young lady who was a friend of one of my theater associates, and she came up with all the other illustrations. And when you look at the book, you'll see that each section has a really cool illustration to
yeah.
start it, and that's how we separate the sections.
So
But
that's great, and I think that's one of the differences that makes it unique and special. So for those who are artists or writers or who love visuals, this book gives you this beautiful combination of art, visual
oh,
art, and
absolutely,
the written word, which is rare. I think it makes it unique, and I think readers are going to really appreciate
absolutely.
the
You know,
layout.
I think it's probably the gift that the girls gave me, because I said I'm not doing this without illustrations. You know, so the I may complain about the time I spent looking for an illustrator, but it was worth it. You know, it was worth it,
Without question. It was
and
definitely worth
and
it.
I would like to do it some more. There's you know, there's so many side factors of this book. It's like since I started writing poetry, I've met people who want to put my poems to music. So now I'm a lyricist. You know, I didn't set out to be a lyricist. You know, I don't. You know, I love music, but I don't think I have any particular musical talents. I'm a pretty good dancer, but you know, but now I'm a lyricist. So there are some songs in the book. There are some poems in the book that when I get around to it, I'll try to see if I can get somebody to record. But they've already been made into songs. So
I think that speaks, Gary, to just how talented you are and how following your passion opens up the door for things that you don't necessarily intend and you can't plan for. So just your journey of writing has led to audiobooks and now visuals and now a lyricist. I mean, who knows what will come next? And so I'm very grateful that you've trusted me to help you with this journey and to bring now your third book to life, and really excited for it to be released on May 18th.
well, You have been very inspirational to me, not just very helpful, but just, I know a little bit about you now, and you've got a presence out there in the social media and probably beyond that. And I'm just blessed to have you help me out with this stuff. There's no way I would ever have gotten this done without you. So um,
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. It's been a joy. It has been so amazing going through this process with you. And people are going to go to GaryLCox.com
yeah,
on May 18th. They're going to check Amazon. They're going to follow you on social media, Instagram, GaryL.Cox, and on Facebook, befriend Gary.
and don't forget my website, which is just GaryCox.com.
Yes. I'm sorry, I made the mistake. The website is GaryCox.com, not Garry L. Cox.
Right. GaryCox.com. I asked one of my helpers, I said, make it easy on me, let's take the L out. Let's just make, what can I remember? What's my name? Gary
Oh, and
Cox.
it's Gary,
Oh,
Gary,
GaryCox.com.
yes, Gary with two R's. That's
Oh,
important.
yes. Thank you. That's
That's
very
really
important.
important. GarryCox.com. The same with social media. Two R's. We want them to be able to find you.
Yep.
Okay, Gary. Well, thank you so much. And we will look forward to the release date and sharing with the world Coffee with the Bard 2020 Blues.
Thank you. It's a wonderful day.